My name is Oliver Reed, and my single splurge in life is a modest kidney-shaped pool that turns the blistering summers of Oak Ridge Meadows into something bearable. The centerpiece of that pool, at least to me, is a giant pink inflatable flamingo christened Phoebe. I picked her up on a whim during a business trip to Key West, drawn to the ridiculous elegance of a palm leaf bandana painted around her rubbery neck. Everything about Phoebe screams fun. She bobs lazily on the turquoise water, reflecting sunset hues like a piece of floating cotton candy, and invites neighborhood kids to giggle whenever they pass my fence. Unfortunately, fun is a four-letter word to Marjorie Klein, chair of the Oak Ridge Meadows Community Council. Marjorie lives 3 doors down in a butter-yellow colonial. Her lawn is clipped with military precision, and rumor has it she once measured her neighbor's hedges with a laser level. Our first clash came months ago, when she cited me for planting mint in my side garden. Apparently, aggressive herbs violate subsection 4D9. But Phoebe was destined to detonate Marjorie's tidy worldview. It happened on a brilliant Saturday. I just settled onto a lounger with a pineapple mocktail when I heard the familiar click-clack of Marjorie's sensible heels on my pavers. She arrived clutching the council codebook like a televangelist wields a Bible. "Mr. Reed," she declared, eyes locked on poor Phoebe, "that object contravenes Article 3, Division B, Paragraph 12, all pool accessories must be neutral in color and proportionate in size." Her tone suggested Phoebe was a radioactive barrel, not an inflatable bird. "Come on, Ms. Klein," I replied. "She's harmless. The neighborhood could use a splash of color." "Color," she sniffed, "is permissible only within the officially approved palette." She produced a fan deck of beige swatches for emphasis. "Remove it by sunset." I tried humor. "What if I paint her taupe?" Phoebe's open to new looks. Marjorie's frown deepened. Mockery will not change the rules. She executed a crisp pivot and marched back toward her immaculate porch, tossing a final warning over her shoulder, "I'll be watching." And watch she did. All afternoon her silhouette lurked behind lace curtains, a sentry guarding conformity. I might have deflated Phoebe there and then, but stubbornness is my most reliable flaw. Instead, I promised myself I'd comply later and retreated indoors for a siesta, lulled by the soft slap of water against fiberglass. That nap would cost me more than I could imagine. I woke to a rumble, a throaty mechanical growl that did not belong in a peaceful suburb. Groggy, I shuffled to the window and nearly swallowed my tongue. Parked at the curb was a rented Conmic cement truck, barrel already spinning. At the deep end of my pool stood Marjorie Klein, floral print sundress flapping like a battle flag, supervising 2 burly contractors in neon vests. For half a second I entertained the hope they were lost. Then the first gush of gray slurry erupted from the chute, splashing across the tile like molten stone. I sprinted outside barefoot. "Marjorie, have you lost your mind?" She didn't even flinch. "Enforcing compliance, Mr. Reed. Your deadline lapsed. The Community Council empowers corrective action." "Corrective? You're entombing my pool." Marjorie folded her arms. "Consider it an upgrade. Concrete decking is low maintenance and, most important, neutral." The contractors kept pouring. Phoebe bobbed helplessly, then listed as thick sludge engulfed her base. Neighbors gathered, phones aloft. Some gasped, others whispered, but no one dared challenge the queen. I dialed the police. The dispatcher politely logged a vandalism report, estimated response, within the hour. By the time the barrel emptied, my beloved oasis resembled a parking lot in progress. Marjorie wiped her hands, satisfied. "Aesthetics restored," she declared, and strode home while I stood amid the wreckage, fist clenched around a useless phone. Anger roared hotter than the July sun. Smashing her prized topiaries felt tempting, but petty. A better idea surfaced: beat Marjorie at her own rulebook game. I recalled hearing old Mr. Hendricks gripe about EPA fines after draining his pool without a permit. Concrete, I suspected, was a far bigger environmental sin. I spent that night deep diving the Environmental Quality Commission's, EQC, digital archives. Sure enough, Section 404 of the Clean Water Act barred unauthorized discharge of concrete slurry into water channels, artificial or natural, with potential groundwater connectivity. Pools, case law hinted, counted if linked to municipal drainage. Armed with hope, I photographed every angle of the bungled lagoon. Filmed neighbors recounting what they'd seen. Chiseled out a cured sample of Marjorie's mess for lab analysis. Then I wrote a concise, evidence-laden email to the EQC's regional office. Subject line, illegal concrete discharge, Oak Ridge Meadows. 2 days passed in limbo. Marjorie resumed patrols, issuing citations for mismatched recycling lids as though she hadn't turned my backyard into a bunker. But on the third morning, 3 SUVs bearing EQC seals rolled down our street. Agents in Navy windbreakers examined the pool, took water cores, scanned the storm drain schematic, and photographed Phoebe's stone-cold beak protruding like a tragic artifact. Marjorie attempted charm, the lead agent cut her off, requesting permits she could not provide. Their investigation, they said, would conclude within a week. Whether it ended in fine, lawsuit, or cleanup order, one thing was certain, Marjorie Klein's reign of beige terror had cracked. 5 excruciating days later, an EQC notice pinged my inbox at 6:47 a.m. I opened it, breath held. Finding, unauthorized discharge of 5.6 cubic yards of cementitious waste into a structure hydrologically connected to municipal groundwater. Penalty, administrative fine of $450,000 under federal statute, plus mandated remediation. My coffee went cold as I reread the figure. Nearly $500,000. For a flamingo. I printed the letter on glossy stock, slid it into a manila folder, and strolled to Marjorie's door. She answered in a lavender tracksuit mid-power walk. "Morning," I said, handing over the folder. She scanned the first page, color drained from her cheeks. This can't be legal." "Law and order, Ms. Klein," I replied, echoing her favorite catchphrase. "They expect a response in 10 days. Just then Calvin Klein, Marjorie's rarely seen husband, pulled into the driveway. A soft-spoken accountant, Calvin stepped out, noticed his wife's ashen face, and accepted the letter she thrust at him. His brow climbed higher with each paragraph. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. "Marvelous," he chuckled. "Marjorie, your obsession finally has a price tag." Turning to me, he said, "Mr. Reed, I apologize for my wife's conduct. May we speak privately?" We retreated to the sidewalk. Calvin confided he'd contemplated divorce for years, weary of Marjorie's tyranny. This fine, he reasoned, would render their joint assets toxic. A swift separation could shield his retirement. Would I consent to share my attorney? The irony was delicious. I agreed, and we arranged a meeting with attorney Gregory Shaw, who nearly giggled at the cascading legal possibilities. Within days, Calvin filed. Marjorie, overwhelmed, tried rallying the council for support, but even her loyalists balked at defending a $500,000 blunder. Petitions circulated to remove her as chair. She spent evenings behind closed blinds while moving vans gradually emptied the yellow Colonial. Remediating a concrete-filled pool is no weekend project. EQC's cleanup order required licensed contractors to pneumatic hammer the slab, haul debris to a hazardous waste facility, and test soil for alkaline leachate. Estimated cost, $60,000, payable by the offender. Calvin, eager to finalize divorce terms, offered a deal. He'd cover restoration if Marjorie signed over her interest in their remaining assets. Cornered, she agreed. 2 weeks later jackhammers echoed across Oak Ridge Meadows, neighbors watched chunks of cement, and the last of Marjorie's authority, hoisted into dumpsters. While crews worked, the council held a special election. By unanimous vote, -1 abstention from Marjorie's vacant seat, retired teacher Ruth Velasquez became chair. Her first act, suspend color-based decor restrictions pending review. Her second. Host an ice cream social to reset the neighborhood vibe. I attended with a tub of pistachio and a battered but intact Phoebe, newly patched, perched on a wagon. Kids cheered, adults snapped selfies. Ruth announced plans for a community garden, Mint welcomed. Laughter rippled where tension once lived. Marjorie. She was last seen driving toward a furnished condo on the far side of town, trailing a U-Haul and the remnants of her porcelain duck collection. Part 5, A New Splash of Color, is almost equal to 700 words. With the pool finally drained, scrubbed, and acid-washed, the restoration crew asked if I wanted standard sky blue epoxy or something a little bolder. Inspiration struck, a gradient of teal fading to sunset coral, echoing Phoebe's island origins. The result transformed my backyard into a Caribbean postcard. Even the contractors asked for photos. On reopening day I threw a Flamingopalooza. Calvin supplied barbecue in gratitude. Ruth unveiled revised guidelines officially sanctioning tasteful whimsical decor. The rule, she quipped, would be known as the Phoebe provision. Residents arrived with inflatable pineapples, toucans, even a floating chessboard. For the first time since moving here, I felt Oak Ridge Meadows breathing easy. Gregory Shaw filed suit for damages, property loss, emotional distress, legal fees. Facing bankruptcy, Marjorie settled quickly, signing a non-disparagement clause that forbade her from uttering Phoebe's name within city limits. The settlement funded a charity scholarship for environmental science students, Gregory's poetic suggestion. As dusk deepened, solar lanterns lit the water. I floated beside Phoebe, listening to Calvin recount plans to volunteer with the new garden committee. Chaos to community, he said, raising a lemonade. We clinked cups. Every saga leaves ripples. The EQC fine made regional headlines, cited in workshops on stormwater compliance. A green tech startup even credited the Oak Ridge Flamingo case for boosting sales of pool filtration sensors. Marjorie, now ex-Klein, appealed the fine, the board upheld it, adding interest. She liquidated collectibles, leased her SUV, took a bookkeeping job 2 towns over. Rumor says she reports untrimmed hedges to management but lacks authority to act. Calvin, conversely, flourished. Freed from marital tension, he organized monthly block concerts, smooth jazz quartets performing beside the freshly landscaped pool deck. He and Ruth spearheaded a Splash of Kindness fundraiser, installing a flamingo-themed splash pad in the neighborhood park. Pink silhouettes spurt water while toddlers squeal. One afternoon the mail brought an unexpected envelope, a handwritten apology from Marjorie. Stilted yet sincere, it admitted she'd allowed rules to eclipse humanity. Enclosed was a check, final settlement on cleanup overruns. I deposited it, then donated the sum to the scholarship fund. Closure, I decided, tastes best when shared. To commemorate 1 year since the concrete calamity, Oak Ridge Meadows launched its inaugural Flamingo Festival. Streets brimmed with fuchsia bunting, bake sale tables offered pink velvet cupcakes, a local brewery tapped Phoebe's Pale Ale. The council invited the EQC agents as grand marshals, thanking them for turning disaster into renewal. I led the pool float parade with Phoebe, sporting a miniature captain's hat. Behind us drifted a flotilla of inflatable dinosaurs, pizzas, even a gargantuan rubber duck named Quentin. A drone filmed from above, streaming to regional news stations. At sunset Ruth delivered a speech about resilience, community, and the absurd catalyst that sparked both. She presented me with a plaque, Oliver Reed and Phoebe, proof that one splash of color can change everything. Cheers echoed off stucco walls. Later, Calvin approached holding a velvet ring box, not for me, obviously, but for Ruth. He proposed under strings of lanterns while Phoebe bobbed approvingly. She said yes, the festival erupted in applause. Talk about turning tides. Tonight, the neighborhood rests, festival lights packed away, but my pool glows softly, all coral and teal beneath the moon. I float beside Phoebe, grateful and bemused. Who would imagine an inflatable bird could lay bare the fault lines of power, pride, and community? Yet here we are, rules rewritten, friendships forged, scholarships funded, and a once rigid suburb now famous for flamboyance. I sip a ginger lime soda and let memories drift, Marjorie's cement mixer rumbling like doom, EQC agents in windbreakers, Calvin's victorious laugh, Ruth's elated yes. The timeline feels surreal, yet the water cradling me is real, and unpolluted. A breeze rustles the mint patch Marjorie once condemned. Its scent mingles with night-blooming jasmine, affirming that order and joy can coexist when guided by empathy rather than enforcement. I tap Phoebe's beak. Not bad for plastic royalty, I whisper. Somewhere across town, Marjorie likely files spreadsheets and regrets. I bear no grudge, she taught Oakridge Meadows a necessary lesson. Balance demands outliers, sometimes flamingos, sometimes rulemakers, to keep society from stagnating. I close my eyes, hearing distant laughter from the splash pad, and imagine ripples spreading, tiny circles of tolerance, far beyond our cul-de-sac. Tomorrow may bring new squabbles about recycling lids or parking permits, but for tonight the water is calm, the sky is clear, and Phoebe the flamingo reigns in technicolor splendor. In the quiet, I murmur a final toast, to bright birds, bold neighbors, and the concrete mistakes that set us free.